Today on Absolute Anthem, we're going to be having some fun with some good old-fashioned theory crafting. Now, whenever I do a video on Anthem, ever, I want you guys to know that you can always find sources to any factual information I cite in the video located right down in the description as well as the pinned comment. Today we don't really have any of that because we're doing some heavy-duty theory crafting stuff, but that's how all of my old videos are for Anthem, and every video I do on this channel ever, whether it's Anthem or not, has information and sources cited when it is necessary right down in the pinned comment below. I won't say anything to you and say it's confirmed without having some sort of a source to back it up, usually directly from the developers themselves. So, about a week ago, I started really looking at the wider world of Anthem, all the information we had, even looking at concept art for things like Fort Tarsis and the Dominion. I started looking at the confirmed information. I started looking at the seemingly social structure of the world of Anthem, and I started asking myself, I wonder where BioWare drew a lot of their inspiration for the world of Anthem. Like the greater theme, the greater aesthetic, the social elements, the story element, the people, the places they come from. Where did they get that inspiration from? Every video game for the most part is inspired by something. Sometimes it's like hard sci-fi and it's just in space, but even then it has inspiration. In the case of Anthem, we don't have like super hardcore sci-fi. We've got almost like softcore sci-fi because we know there's no mass production, we know there's no computer chips, and the javelins are more like individual suits of armor that have been crafted by hand that are flown like World War II early era jet fighters, right? So when I kept looking at all these different bits and pieces of Anthem, I kept coming back to the medieval era, to the Middle Ages, the 5th to the 15th century, and I found that there were a lot of points that I could connect between Anthem and its world, its social structure even, some speculation on its social structure, and the Middle Ages. So let's actually start with the Dominion and the fact that we know they hail from the Northern Kingdom. Now, kingdoms were the primary way in which the world, the lands, in the Middle Ages were broken up. You controlled the kingdom, a king controlled the kingdom. There were multiple kingdoms, they would war, they would trade, there would be peace, etc., etc. So if the Dominion hails from the Northern Kingdom, where the hell is Fort Tarsis? Is Fort Tarsis in the Southern Kingdom, the Western Kingdom, or perhaps Fort Tarsis doesn't exist in a kingdom at all, but instead on the edges of the wild, sort of a last stand of an old fallen kingdom, preserving this specific group of people. I mean, we know the Dominion are also humans, much like the people behind the walls of Fort Tarsis and the Freelancers themselves, so maybe at one point this was a world filled, or meant to be filled, with glorious kingdoms. So perhaps those kingdoms just started to rise shortly after the disappearance of the Shaper gods. The humans started to create and build regardless, and maybe Fort Tarsis was a big part of that. We really don't know, but that is an area in which we can speculate and again draw a connecting point to the Middle Ages. Now let's actually take a look at this concept art for Fort Tarsis, because I find this to be rather striking. It is indeed concept art, but nonetheless, concept art is often used to set the theme, the structure, the aesthetic for the world. And what we see inside of the walls of Fort Tarsis here, and what we actually saw in the E3 2017 demo as well, is something that is very archaic in a sense. There's not a lot of advanced technology here. We don't have buildings that are constructed of steel. They're made of stone with some really delicate and intricate artwork and inlays in them. I mean, all of this feels very extravagant, but also, again, crafted from simple materials. We see a lot of stone, a lot of fabrics. There's tapestries hanging from the sides of the buildings here even. We see wooden scaffolding on one of the buildings to the right. And what I really want you to look at here at the bottom of the screen is very clearly a sewer grate. That's right. We may have jetpacks that you feel are just like Iron Man's suit, but we don't have the technology for advanced waste disposable, and we still have sewer grates in the middle of our streets here. So they're like maybe not even flushing toilets for all we know. They're just like pooping in holes where the stuff kind of drips down into the sewers. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's, that looks as far as they've gotten along here, which is a very interesting juxtaposition. And when people ask me, why or how could you be excited about Anthem's story and setting, that's why. There's this very interesting juxtaposition here between the technology that we have for like the javelins and the striders and what's going on with the rest of the world. I mean, this is obviously not a very technologically advanced race. And that brings us to the Freelancers and the javelins themselves. When we look at the Freelancers, when we look at the Dominion, we know the Dominion also have javelins of their own. They very much come across to me as knights. Knights that exist within an order of knights. And here's the thing, a lot of people I see this question asked a lot in regards to Anthem's story. People say, I don't understand, why wouldn't the people behind the walls of Fort Tarsis just like want javelins for themselves? Why wouldn't everyone want to go out in the open world and engage in combat? Well, I mean, first and foremost, does everyone want to become a soldier, a Marine? You know, does everyone want to fly in the Air Force? No. Certain people want to do that and certain people don't. But in the case of the Middle Ages, it was about your wealth and your social status. If you weren't well known and born from a great family who was honorable and who also had a lot of money, you simply weren't going to be a knight, which is why a lot of stories that take place in that time period talk about, you know, the poor individual, the poor child becoming a great warrior, because people sought that. They wanted to be that in a sense, but only the wealthiest of individuals could afford to have armor constructed for themselves and horses and great weaponry built so they could take it on out into the battlefield. It was one of the few eras in human history where the rich fought the battles for everyone, not the other way around. So, when we look at the Freelancers in the Dominion, they are essentially an order of knights, and the javelins are their plate armor. Expensive, handcrafted just for them, and the reason they can afford it, well, maybe because of their social structure, maybe because they continue to make so much money, they continue to be wealthy, and they continue to maintain that status as a member of the Freelancers, the Dominion, as a knights within that order of knights. I mean, we do know that the Freelancers go on out behind the walls of Fort Tarsis, not just to defend the people within them, to deal with the Shaper relics and the greater threat that will eventually be the Dominion and the Scars, but because they get paid for it as well. In fact, there's a line in the EA Play demo where Owen says, hazardous waste, this is going to increase the pay for this. So again, very much connecting to that idea of them being the wealthiest of individuals within the social hierarchy, maybe not just behind the walls of Fort Tarsis, but for humanity as a whole as it exists within the world of Anthem. I like this. This is the thing I've been digging about Anthem. And for the last week, I've gotten more excited about its setting and its story because I've been sort of building this theory as to their direct inspiration from the Middle Ages. And I'm like, man, that's kind of cool. You know, that opens up the potential for just factions long term, for the Dominion to be like this other Knights Order, to be able to tell a pretty cool story, you know, in the long run, when it has that sort of Middle Age inspiration behind it. And, you know, again, we see a lot of that with Fort Tarsis. We really do. This just lack of technology within the walls of Fort Tarsis. The javelins in this case, they come across as very advanced, you know, in their technological presentation, but they were built by hand. And it's the same thing when we look at plate armor during the Middle Ages. I mean, that was the best of the best. It was intricate, it was detailed, it was unique, it was beautiful, incredible craftsmanship. It was, you know, top dog when it came to technology. Everything else, everything that the normal folks had within the cities behind the different forts that defended the people, you know, paled in comparison. And that's very much what we see with the world of Anthem. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. You know, as we learn more factual information on the greater world of Anthem, I want to do lore videos and really dive deep into the lore. I always wanted to do lore. I missed out on that boat with like Destiny. I never really got into it. And I'm just like already kind of stoked on Anthem. You know, it's fun to draw your own conclusions like this before a game comes out and then see what you actually learn when the game is out and you've got real hardcore information. So yeah, feel free to share some of your thoughts. Let me know what you think of my theory down in the comment section below. I hope you guys have a killer weekend, and I will see you in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose, the most important task of your life.